good stuff from Butler and Hologorsen yesterday, I thought.
I agree.
A lot of interesting
I
stuff.
was taking notes.
Do you ever get the sense, and I think we ask ourselves this maybe like once or twice during the season. We definitely ask ourselves this too often during the off season
Mm-hmm.
because Rhule is so forthcoming and open with a lot of stuff. And as he says, he has nothing to lose, right? He has
Mm-hmm.
everything to gain from it. I feel like they're giving us that are paying attention
Mm-hmm.
a lot of information.
I would agree. I noticed this first with Butler because we got a little bit more of him earlier last year as a position coach, and so we kind of got to know him a little bit. Dana came in very late, obviously, and so it's hard to know. And I'll be honest, I wasn't like real dialed into his Houston press conferences, and the West Virginia ones have been a minute, right?
Right.
So I wasn't as familiar when Dana came in, and also the circumstances which he came in were pretty strange.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure what to make of kind of his demeanor last year. With Butler, though, I really do feel like we've seen a big change in just his like comfort level with the media and just the fan base, I think, as well. I think there's something to. I think that Rhule sort of asks this of his coaches.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe I'm wrong.
No,
I don't have any information there. This is just the sense that I get.
I think you are right, though, because Rhule understands. I mean, the podcast, his social media appearances, the more that Rhule gets out there, he knows that this is my public image I am presenting. And Rhule has said it on this show, too, when you call him wildly, in the middle of a walk. But he said it that wherever the N goes, I should be there,
Yeah.
right? And if the N is being represented in press conferences by his other, compatriots when it comes to his coordinators, they too should also understand that, like, yeah, accounts like Hurrdat Sports and Hail Varsity are going to be posting clips of John Butler out. So if you come across super grumpy or super whatever, like, you can be your personality.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. Be who you are. But you also have to have you have to be consistent. You have to kind of stick with that sort of messaging of like, we know we're representing the program every single time we step in front. And notably, I mean, not to compare apples to oranges like we usually do, but that wasn't the case in other coaching regimes in the past because it's like they forgot the cameras were on them at times.
Well, it's also like they forgot who paid them.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest,
Yeah.
it's like I'm not trying to be that guy, but you are some of the highest paid employees of the state of Nebraska.
Right.
Right. And I get not all that's tax dollars. I get a lot of it's booster money and fundraising and things like that. I get that. But you're a public employee. You're literally an employee of the public university system of Nebraska. And you are incredibly front facing. And you're literally the highest paid employees of the state. Right. Coach Rhule certainly is. I have a hard time imagining anybody else in the state is making seven figures, which Butler and Hologorsen both are. I think Butler is. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
If it's not, it's close, right? So I have a hard time believing anybody else in the state is making that kind of money. So I think there is kind of an obligation of you have to give these people a little bit, right? It's also, I do think there's an appreciation there that this job doesn't exist without the people that feed it, whether it's the fans, first and foremost the fans, and then the media that sort of try and feed the fans what they're trying to, or the content that they are desiring to consume. Like, without all that, none of this exists, right? The best facility in the country doesn't exist. The 405 straight sellouts doesn't exist. The whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
All that doesn't exist. And so I think Coach Rhule is the first coach in a long time, maybe since maybe ever. He might be the first coach ever in Nebraska history who has understood that is part of it, right? That's not to take anything away from other coaches that have been good, but like Tom Osborne didn't really have to deal with this part of it.
Right. There's the media aspect of it too, but he didn't have to get up and was expected to, for better or worse, Matt Rhule gets up there and performs twice a week.
Yeah,
he does go straight entertainment when he goes on Mondays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
And then he adds everything else that he does too.
Well, and there's the landscape is way different.
Yes.
Than it was when like Solich was here, right? I do think it started to change like in the Callahan Pelini eras is where it really, by that point you're full into the recruiting website era and things like that. But I just don't. I think when you see the changes, and I think it's particularly noticeable, like I said, with Butler, because we did see him last year. He seemed uncomfortable at times. I do think it's something that he tries to impress upon his coaches. Hey, this is important. This isn't the NFL. You can't just go up there and say, like, there's not some one single multi-billionaire owner who's paying for everything, and the NFL is this unstoppable machine where, like, college football programs do become irrelevant.
Yep.
Right? That's a real thing that happens to actual college football programs. So you really can't afford to alienate the people that keep you from becoming irrelevant, especially when you haven't won at a high level yet.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so I do think it seems like he goes out of his way to be like, hey, you have to give these people as much information as won't hurt us.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And they do a great job of that because we have been dancing around this number 2 running back conversation since last week.
And they've been honest. What I like this week is they're honest. They're like, hey, we think we've got it figured out. Yep. I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I'm cool with.
What more do you want? Like, if you're going to watch a movie, do you want it to be spoiled right in the middle of it? Like, do you want to be told at the end? No, wait till Saturday. Like, we will find out on Saturday.
Listen, I would love if they tell us. I also understand if they've got, like, if it's I think it's going to be a situation where Isaiah Mosey is kind of playing more of a hybrid role and getting some 2-back sets in there. And, like, that's what I think it is. If you're going to introduce somebody new into a game plan in a way that you haven't before, I understand how that is a competitive advantage for Michigan State not to know that.
Right. But it's also a competitive advantage, too, for Nebraska to say, hey, we got to figure it out, Michigan State. Good luck figuring it out.
Right.
Like, we're not going to tell you how it works.
So I don't have a problem. A lot of times I think college football coaches are overly paranoid.
Yeah.
Right. we're not dealing with, like, nuclear codes or anything here. Like, for the most part, the information that they have to offer is not that sensitive, which is why I appreciate they give us as much as they do in press conferences. But I do understand there's some times where it's like, hey, in this specific instance, like, it's not going to be helpful for us to share what our plan is if we've got a special plan for a player on offense or which left tackle we think is going to play or whatever, right? When there's a competitive advantage, I totally understand acknowledging the question, saying, hey, we think we figured it out. You're going to have to wait till Saturday because that's not something I want to share right now.
Yep.
That's an honest and legitimate answer, and I'm cool with it. There's a difference between that and going full Belichick and just being like, we're on to Buffalo.
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? Like, that's a totally different thing, and you can do that here, but by God, you better win a hell of a lot of games.
Right, yeah. Well, because then you become like the nuisance of the offseason that, like, oh, whatever. And then, usually court of public opinion would sway and everyone would kind of readjust there. But the fact that when you are talking about just the open honesty, being yourself, like being in the press conferences, I thought maybe the best answer that we actually got from John Butler was an answer that means nothing for this week at all, was that I think he's completely comfortable in front of the media because when they asked him directly about, hey, have you seen what Cincinnati's quarterback's been doing since you played him? And he just goes, no. I have not been paying attention. No. Is that easy for anyone to say? Yeah, but did it come across as very genuine because we've heard and seen from him more? Yeah, I actually fully believe that he was like, I have literally never went back and looked at Brendan Sweet.
Yeah, I mean, why would he?
No, there's no reason to.
Right? Although I did think it was funny where he was like, I guess he's pretty good.
But again, he knows because he understands.
Yeah.
That's the other part, too, that I do love about it. And we have gotten the inklings of it, especially from Rhule this season, more than really any of the years past in his open media availabilities, is that they're addressing the things that the fan base is talking about, whether online, in the stadium, on these shows, all that sort of stuff. They are talking about that because they are taking in kind of that information, and they're not using it as like a discretion that they're being like, okay, well, we're just not going to talk about this stuff because obviously the fan base wants to learn, whatever. But likely when the fan base has concerns, that's also the concerns of the coaching staff too. But also when the fan base wants to publicly praise and defend the program and say, hey, look, we're actually doing some right stuff, the coaches are actually like noticing that as well. And they do go out of the way to be like, oh yeah, I guess we're pretty good at defending the pass against a really good quarterback, because what have we been talking ourselves into the past 4 weeks since that Arrowhead game? We've been saying Brendan Sorsby might actually be a good quarterback. Look at his stats. Look how he's performing in the Big 12. Look at all these numbers he's putting up. Yeah, I think that they knew what they did against him. But now that they can kind of publicly say, yeah, we probably had a good idea of what we were doing against Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think I do think it's I do think it's a little funny. I mean, it's 975 yards and 10 touchdowns for Brennan Sorsby in 3 games since Nebraska, which surprise. I don't know if you know this. I guess that's pretty good. I guess he's pretty good. I do understand, I understand people, we're talking about the run defense or whatever, and somebody in the chat here, Jeremy says, the media is beginning to go after Rhule. Husker Online is talking about how they can't run the ball, can't stop the run.
The media.
Things like that. Yeah.
We gotta Shane and Rico are here. We gotta work on like a deep voice, like very scary, like horror movie type guy that just says the media.
Yeah, just so we've got the boogeyman, right?
Yeah, right.
The media.
We also have it pop on screen.
We also, like one of those on
jump scare. Yes, it goes
like one of those on 3 graphics that just like with just the one word across the bottom, where I don't even remember. Some of them are ridiculous. They're like considering. It's like, wait, what?
Or like, I like the ones where it's like a photo of like a quarterback at the combine and it just says small.
Like, yes.
Really?
You're like tiny hands.
I hate that.
But I got these tiny hands. But no, I mean, I don't want to be lumped in with the media.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like I get the people are frustrated, but I also defense, this is something DB says all the time. Like you have to give up something.
Yeah.
Right. That's the nature of defense. We heard Butler talk about this, right? Where he's talking about the zone versus the man and like, hey, yeah, you might get a couple more takeaways with a zone defense, but you're not really going to challenge routes on a consistent basis with without man defense. And he's like, I just don't think you're going to have an elite pass defense without going man-to-man. And it's like, yes, but that means you're like there are things you give up in man-to-man. One of those things that you give up is potentially quarterback run game, right? Defensive backs turn their backs to run with wide receivers. They don't have their eyes in the backfield. Quarterback run game can get away from you a little bit. So you bring in a spy. Okay, well, if you bring in a spy, then you don't have as much help over top for the receivers in your pass game as well, right? So like you're always sacrificing one thing to try and fix another. And maybe that's worth it, right? Maybe the corners, as I suspected against Michigan, maybe the corners are good enough that they don't need as much help. And you can bring somebody to spy, whether it's a Sorsby or an Underwood or a Childs, right? Maybe you can leave those guys on an island a little bit. Maybe you do need to run a little bit of zone because you say, okay, we're going to bring some extra pressure. We're going to sit on these things short, and then I don't think you're going to beat us over the top. So you're not going to have enough time to find the holes in the zone or whatever the case is, right? There's lots of different things, but there's always something you're sacrificing in the course of that. And that's not to say that they still don't need to get better. Right. We talked or Rhule talked about this. I think Rhule mostly talked about it on Monday where he goes, hey, like, yeah, at some point we need guys to make those special plays, right? We need them to get off a block and do this. And Butler talked about, hey, we need to find the guys that are going to get down into the run fits the way they're supposed to. And I thought he brought up a really good point with Buford when he talked about, hey, if you look, he's talking about the run from Haynes where he goes for 75. He goes, hey, if you look at the run, Marquise didn't make the tackle, but he's like, we have to have guys getting off blocks.
Yeah.
That was an 8-man front defense where we had every gap fitted, and sooner or later, you've got to be able to get off a block and make a play.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the truth, right? Could Marquise have been probably 2-3 steps further down the line by the time Haynes got there? Absolutely. And would that have made it much easier to tackle him so he didn't have as much open space to make him miss? 100%. But at some point, you also have guys on the defensive line or linebackers that you go, okay, if they get off a block, then we don't have that situation. I believe it was Shavers on that same play. If Shavers had been able to shed his block, then it's a one running back on 2 defenders instead of a one-on-one with a smaller safety. Like, there's lots of things that go into this, and they're aware of all of them, right? That's all you can really ask at this point as a fan because, as in general, the defense has not really hurt them.
Right. And I think that's another part of it, too, though, is that they are responding and answering that, like, what we have been saying for Hail Varsity post games. Like when we react to these games right after, whenever there have been concerns about how Nebraska has played in their wins against Cincinnati and Akron and Houston Christian, or even a loss to Michigan, we've been able to say almost every single time, hey, these are all correctable mistakes. Like they're not getting like completely outperformed. They're not losing like the battle of talent, right? Like the talent is pretty much getting to equal. Like maybe it's against Michigan. You could probably say, okay, maybe it's a little bit ahead for the Wolverines, but nothing else. Nebraska was right there. Everything that they're doing is correctable. Sometimes the correcting mistake, I believe, is you just have to get a different person in. But it's not like, hey, only our ones can play, and if they don't perform, we're screwed. Like they are saying, we have things that we can correct. We had a bye week to correct these things, and now we're going to play Michigan State for a chance to be able to show that we've corrected them.
Well, and I appreciate the fact that they're openly talking about, hey, if these guys, if the guys we have in there right now aren't able to execute what we're asking them to do, we basically have two options.
Yeah.
We can get a guy in there that can, and if that also isn't working, we have to run something else that someone on this team can execute at a high level, right? I appreciate that they're like, it's not one of those things where, like, if you couldn't run Bo's defense, you just weren't going to play. Right.
Yep.
Like if you weren't
we've
able,
heard those horror stories before.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
if people would just get shelved and never heard from again, and you'd have guys that would take, it would take highly rated recruits 3-4 years to get on the field because they just couldn't quite get it in Bo's defense. And I remember the questions then, why can't we get these guys on the field? Why can't we get these guys on the field? Like
nobody can do that.
And people would say, hey, you're telling me that Bo's defense is that much more complicated than like Saban's at Alabama, and Saban gets freshmen on the field all the time. Like I remember having all these conversations with people. And the fact of the matter was that Bo was so rigid in what he wanted out of a defense that if he didn't trust you to do it, you weren't going to see the field. I think there's a little bit of a compromise here of trying to find the best players to fit the best scheme. I mean, there was I think it was from Rhule. I don't know if you still have it, Shane. He said a line on Monday about the wrong player or the right players in the wrong defense are better than the right or the wrong players in the the wrong players in the right defense is never going to be as good as the right players in the wrong defense, right? So that's where he's talking about a couple weeks ago with there's no magical call. Like there's no magical defensive call where you're just like, hey, this is going to stop everything. And listen, you may get it right a few times and you line it up perfectly with what the offense is trying to do. But for the most part, it's about putting guys in the best position to make plays and then having the guys that can make those plays.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb here, I think we are going to see some different personnel. I don't know if it's starters or what, but I think we're going to see way more Dawson Merritt than we have he started to play more, but I think we're going to see a lot of Dawson Merritt moving forward. I think we're going to see some changes in the secondary at the safety spots to some guys that can get downhill a little bit better. We saw, there was a pretty quick hook on Buford in the Michigan game. We saw a lot of Rex Guthrie after that. I think they're going to make some of those changes as well. Like, I think you're going to see them be like, hey, we're going to get the guys in here that we think that can make the plays. And that's all you can really ask for.
Right.
Like I understand the frustration of getting gashed 3 times against Michigan. I do. Like in real time watching that, you're just like, how is this happening?
Yeah.
But it's the thing I tried to say last week, right? When you take kind of a 30,000-foot view, even me who was like, I think you just got to make Underwood beat you.
Yep.
Right. I also understand that you had basically one play a quarter that got away from you. So it's really hard to throw everything out and try something new, right? Because it's working 90% of the time.
Can I add a counter argument to this?
Sure.
This just occurred to me and thought of it. And just because we were having the conversation like with Dana and everything, and what was those conversations kind of like with Texas Tech under Mike Leach and then with Dana when he was at West Virginia and Houston, right? That the offense is always going to outscore you. It's if the defense just makes enough stops to keep the other offense from keeping up with however prolific your offense was, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that that's maybe where Nebraska is like leaning towards this season, but is that part of maybe the conversation that Nebraska has in the bye week that it's like, our offense is very good, but they're not performing like 40 points every single game. Obviously against Michigan, they got to 27, but is there a certain number that the Nebraska offense goes in their meetings on that Monday or Tuesday when they get back from the bye week and they're talking to themselves and saying, if we hit this number every single week, our defense is this good that we just have to pass this number and we will win, whatever games moving forward. And again, it doesn't have to be, we got to score 70 points every single week to win. But if Nebraska's defense forces one turnover and we can get an extra possession, we can win by 14 every single week, right? Like you can just pace yourselves out. It just made me think about when you guys talked to Schaefer last week and he had said something that was, out of context, very obvious when it goes, well, the offense just has to outscore everybody, right, to be able to win. Yeah, you win. You win most of your games by scoring more points than the other team.
Last time I checked, that is the rule.
But it is an interesting thought process, though, because there are different ways to play defense, right? There are different ways that you can scheme it up where you're like, listen, we may not be able to stop every single person or every single, play that's coming our way. Like you said, we're not going to design a perfect defense that stops everybody. But we can design a defense that tries to create more turnovers, that tries to be more aggressive. And maybe we give up like leakier plays and we're giving up more yards, which is concerning for some. But if you're winning the games, it doesn't really matter how you win them if your defense is performing up to a level in which your offense can then take advantage of, right?
Yeah, sorry.
I know that's a convoluted way to put it.
But I understand what you mean for sure. I don't think they think about it that way.
Right.
I do think playing, you hear the term complementary football a lot. I do think that matters, right? Like if you've got an up-tempo offense and you want to Sorry, the Browns apparently are benching Joe Flacco, and so
what?
The ESPN thought
for who? Oh, Dylan.
Apparently not Riola, Gabriel. Apparently they thought that was worth, as we were making fun of the big graphics earlier, it was apparently worth a very enormous breaking news, as if that anyway. Sorry. I think you do have to play complementary football. I don't think you think about it like, hey, our defense is 35 points good, so we need to score 36 every game. I think you think about it in the sense of, hey, we want to play this style of offense. What type of defense complements that?
Right. But I mean, even in so if you go back to 2009, it was the opposite way, right? It was, hey, offense, try not to just show up and try to not lose the game for us, right? Because the defense is going to put you in positions to win the game.
Right.
I think it's harder to actually do it the opposite way, where it's like, hey, defense, set up the offense to be successful. Because if you have a bad defense, it's really hard to just be like, can you guys get one turnover, please? Can you cover a fumble, that sort of thing?
Even with that, though, I do think there's things you can do, right? I put it in terms of basketball because that's what I coached, but there's if you want to play a super up-tempo style of offense in basketball, it is to your advantage, even if you give up more, to play a super aggressive, turnover-focused defense, right? You're going to give some things up on the back end, but you're going to gain more possessions, which if you've got a high-powered offense and you're trying to speed the game up, that's what you want to do, right? If you're trying to have a high-powered, fast-paced offense, but then you play a pack line defense where everybody basically goes inside the three-point line and just hey, take as much, you can pass around the perimeter for as long as you want. That's not complementary offense and defense, right? I sort of think the same thing is true to a certain extent with football, right? If you're trying to you're trying to maximize the number of possessions for your offense, maybe it does make sense to play a zone where you might get a couple more turnovers, like Butler was talking about. Maybe it does make sense to blitz a little bit more and try and disrupt the quarterback a little bit more to either create negative plays or turnovers to try and get the ball back for your offense. If you think that's who your offense is, there's adjustments kind of stylistically and aggressively that you can make on defense to account for that. Again, I don't think it's hey, if we play our very best defense, we're giving up 28 points.
Right, yeah.
I need you to score 29. I don't think it's that sense. I think it's more of what do we want our football team to look like in general? Where is our strength and how can everything else complement that?
I think your basketball analogy was our Nebraska Creighton preview for the
100%.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you just
nailed it
out right there. Yeah. A high flying, fast paced offense against a defense that just packs the paint and doesn't let you shoot.
I have to go back and get something from
from
Jeremy here, because he goes, it's not just running quarterbacks. We gave up 100 yards to Akron and HCS or HCU and FCS.
We gave up 100 yards. Do you hear what you're saying?
Yeah, let me just hold on. First of all,
sir, step back.
They gave up 93 yards to Houston Christian. Would you like to guess how many yards per carry that was?
1.2.
2.7.
Dang, that's close.
2.7 yards per carry. They gave up a total of 160 yards of total offense.
Yeah, that's too much.
100.
What's the standard, Ravi? Come on.
Against Akron.
Take away Blackshirt.
Everybody's. Lose them all.
Yep.
Against Akron. Would you like to guess how many yards they rushed for? It is over 100. So
what?
Ring the panic bell.
104.
113.
You don't point the finger, you point the thumb.
113. Do you know how many yards per carry they had?
2.2.
3.1.
Dang.
They had a total of 175 yards of total offense.
Woo.
So what are we talking about here, guys? I mean, what are we talking about here?
We're concerned.
Michigan was the first passing offense to gain 100 yards on them, and they had 105.
Yeah. Yeah.
They, come on, man. 3.1 yards per carry is the high there, right? What are we talking about? I'm sorry. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. Like, this is, if you're giving up 60 yards passing, I will take the 90 yards or 100 yards rushing over the course of an entire game when they're running it over 30 times.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
this is what we're talking about here. I don't know what, at least as if there isn't a negative in front of the number, it's a failure. You got it.
TK,
you nailed it.
None of them literally died. Might as well have lost.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Iowa.
Yeah, and Eric, great point. A lot of second and third strings played a lot of that second half of that contest in both games.
Wonder how that was affected at all. Maybe weird.
Yeah. But it's the media.
Jeremy did say, look at Iowa's defense. Iowa's defense and Iowa's offense are a really good example of complementary football.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. You brought up 09, right? Their job was to not turn it over 9 times.
Shout out Iowa State.
Which famously they failed at once. Right?
Yeah.
Like, that was the bar. Don't turn it over 9 times.
8 we can handle.
8 they would have been able to handle, in fact. 8's a W.
Have you ever went back and looked at Zach Lee's stats from that championship game?
What was that? That'd have been Texas?
Yeah.
No, I have not. I look at Ndamukong Suh's stats all the time.
Right, that's the thing is we were like, oh man, what a great performance by the defense.
Can I just ballpark it? Can I just vibe check it?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull it up for you so
all right.
You can get it.
If I had to guess, I would say he was somewhere in the neighborhood of
It's so funny.
9 for 22.
Okay.
For 87 yards.
Okay.
I believe no touchdowns.
No touchdowns.
And I will say 1 interception.
He was 6 of 19 for 39 passing yards and 3 interceptions.
Good Lord.
2.1 yards per attempt. And they almost won the game.
So technically, he did have 3 completions, or he did have 9 completions. Just 3 of them were to the other team.
Yes, correct.
That was close. That's horrifying.
And people forget.
People do forget. Honestly, so if he had just not thrown the 3rd interception, again, much like the 9th turnover,
that's what we're talking about.
Probably could have survived.
Yeah,
right?
But I mean, that is something to say. Like, it's tongue in cheek here, but when you do look at it from this year's current roster and current perspective, you're playing with a quarterback that, did throw an interception in the last game, but he has not been turnover issue, right? This entire start of the season.
He's got 1 interception in 4 games.
Right,
you'll take that.
If you're the defense, you're kind of trusting your offense to be like, they're not really putting us in bad positions like we've been in years past. Like, we're not getting to have to defend short sides of the field. We're giving our offense pretty short fields to play with. Like, we're setting them up for success. Again, all the hand-wringing and consternation, as DB would say, right? Mm-hmm. When it came to that first drive and you go for it on 4th and you pin them, back, then you get a short field to then set up.
They played field position.
Yeah, and then you have a chance to score again. I get it. People wanted 3 points because the final score had a 3-point deficit. I understand where that comes from. But when they're in the game flow and they're playing the game as it was going on in the moment, they were able to trust that the defense was going to do what they ended up doing. Nebraska's offense just failed to score. That's as simple as it was. And I think Nebraska's defense and coaching staff as a whole would say 9 times out of 10 in that situation, depending on where we are in the game, we're going to take that situation pretty much every time. Like, we're going to set up the offense to go for it on 4th and 1 short. Yeah. And we're also going to take our defense and trust them that the offense will get a short field when they get back on the field. I think that they're going to take those opportunities more often than not because that's who they are as a team. It's not the old days where it's, the offense is going to go for it on 4th and 1 because if they don't, the defense is, never going to see the ball again, that sort of thing. Like, that's just not the case this year.
Yeah, and I think you have to, like, if you're Nebraska and you take away the actual results, right? We're all about process and standard and all that, right? So you take away the actual results and you say, hey, did this play out the way we wanted it to?
Yeah.
The answer is yes, right? It didn't end in the results they wanted to. Obviously, they wanted points. But if you're going to say, hey, we have an opportunity to drive down the field, get an opportunity to score. Okay, you get stopped on 4th down. Obviously not what you want there, but you're in a decision-making process where you're like, okay, if we get stopped on 4th down, we're going for it because we know that we could pin them back deep here. If we pin them back deep here, can we get a stop and flip field position for our offense to get the ball back? that was the goal. That's exactly what happened. You're like, okay, so we've got an opportunity to get points again. They got into field goal range again, and then they missed the field goal, right? So the results didn't go the way you wanted to, but in terms of the process and the thought process behind it, it all was what you want. Now, you have to execute just a little bit better, right? So we're talking about all the time. You have to execute it just a little bit better. If you're the defense, you have to execute things just a little bit better so that Justice Haynes has a 9-yard run instead of a 75-yard run.
Yeah.
You have to execute just a little bit better so Marshall has an 8-yard run instead of a 54-yard run. Like, that's just what it is, right? But if you're talking about the thought process, and that's what I think is encouraging. I know people get sick of me saying this sometimes, but in years past, the process was broken, right? I get the Michigan game is frustrating. I get that maybe we didn't love how it looked against Cincinnati, even though apparently pretty good and the quarterback is really good, right?
Yeah.
Like, I get the frustrations there, but this is not the same thing we've been watching. And I think we're going to see that play out over the next 4 games when you're playing opponents that I don't think are as good as Cincinnati and are definitely not as good as Michigan.
Yep.
Michigan State, Minnesota, Maryland, Northwestern. I switched 2 of those. Michigan State, Maryland, Minnesota, Northwestern. All of those teams are teams in which the process playing out the way it did against Michigan will get you wins.
Yep.
It will. And do you still have to strive to execute better? 100%. Is this still the youngest team in the Big Ten? So I believe they're going to continue to get better throughout the season? 100%. That, I think, is a cold, hard fact. I just do. This is, like, I'm not making that up. It's the youngest team in the Big Ten. That's a real thing. Like, does Williams Nwaneri look like the same player from week to week? No, he gets better every single week.
Yep.
Deshaun McCullough, who's 5th year, 6th year, 8th, 10th year, I don't know, he's been in college forever. Seems like he's still getting better. Yeah. Every single week. I mean, nobody even wants to throw at Sierra Wright. Not a soul. They're just like, absolutely not. 100% no. If you throw it, if you're a quarterback and you throw it to Sierra Wright, you're going straight to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Like, no throwing to Sierra Wright. Like, that's a huge improvement from last year. Like, there's places where the improvement needs to be more stark. Offensive tackle is a good example of that. Totally understand that. Defensive line, you need some of those guys on the interior, not just Williams Nwaneri, to start stepping up. I need my guy Keona Davis to become a playmaker. Elijah Judy, was he better against Michigan than he was at literally any other point in his career? Yes, he was. Yeah. Riley Van Poppel, has he been better in the last 3 games since he was at Cincinnati? Yes, 100%. Like, I look at this team, I see a team that's continually getting better. I see a team that, even if they were 45 plays away from their standard, they were only 4 or 5 plays away from beating Michigan, right?
Yep.
This is a team that's getting better, and I think that plays out starting this week against Michigan State, but I think we'll see it throughout the month of October. I really do.